And welcome to another edition of Quoth the Raven. This is the beginning of season 2, and this is the episode, the Lost Wrestling episode, that was supposed to come out last year, but didn't due to various circumstances. I am your host, Louis Bright Raven, and this is actually a couple of hours late tonight. It's supposed to be on at 9. It's almost midnight already. So we're going to just try and get this done quickly as possible. Get right to the situation. With wrestling, it's a little bit different than my normal conversations. Let's keep it like that. That's better. This year we're doing a little bit things different for this particular subject, because normally I don't talk about the wrestling, but I've had a number of viewers who have asked me, due to their knowledge of me being a wrestling fan, and that I had done some wrestling reviews and columns for other parties in the past, so they were hoping I would bring that into the Quoth the Raven podcast. So I'm going to try to do that in 2020 a little bit more, but maybe once a month or something. We'll see. But most of the time, no. But I'm going to do my thoughts on it just this once for what happened for last year. And we're going to start with the reviews of the companies. We're going to go alphabetical for the ones I watch, or at least know of relatively well. And that would be All Elite Wrestling starting. That is a new company that just started this past year. All Elite Wrestling's world champion is Chris Jericho. The women's champion is Riho. The world champions are SoCal Uncensored. A couple of their key players also are Cody Rhodes, Darby Allin, Mox, Ray Pentagon Jr., and Ray Phoenix, also known as the Lucha Brothers. MJF, that's Maxwell, Jacob Friedman, Hangman Adam Page, Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks are the two tag teams in the bottom right corner. And the guys in the middle are Marco Stunt and Orange Cassidy. So those are some of their key wrestlers on their roster right now. And mostly what I think they do right as a company right now, because they're a new company. Like I said, they've only been around a little over a year. I think they actually started out in January of 19, but their first shows were in the summer of 19, if I remember correctly. But yeah, January 2019 is when they formed, and then I think it was July or August. But they do have their world champions booked correctly right now. Chris Jericho as the men's world champion is the most experienced and most capable of putting over just about anybody else on the roster and still look good doing it. Same thing with their current men's tag team champions, SoCal Uncensored. they've got some really good factions or clique groups or stables, as they're sometimes called in the wrestling community, such as Jericho's Inner Circle and again, So Khaled says through this sort of a faction. The Elite, which is Kenny Omega, the Bucks, um, Dustin and Cody Rhodes, a few others. And this can eventually potentially lead to some really solid faction wars if that gets booked correctly, and so far it has been. They also came up with a really interesting idea, which is keeping seasonal win-loss records to determine who the top contenders for the championships will be. And I think that has potential to make the bookers and writers do a better job of booking the matches, since all the matches technically, quote unquote, count. But there are things that AEW does, in my opinion, wrongly. Number one, their women's division is a mess. Their champion Riho is this tiny little toothpick comparative to most of the everyone else in the division. I think she's like 5'2" and weighs maybe 100 pounds. And she's not there every week competing on the program, partly because she is so small, I think. And it's been rumored and speculated that Kenny Omega, who apparently is the booker for the women's division, is protecting her, possibly because they're in a personal relationship. I have no idea if that's true or not, but that's the speculation. But the reality is they're not using their top names in their women's division to any significant use. They've got Awesome Kong, who is probably the best choice for their champion right now. Basically, as a sidekick to Cody Rhodes' wife, Brandy, in this silly supernatural gimmick that's just, what's the point? And they have Nyla Rose, who's their other big woman on the roster, who should be chasing Awesome Kong, in my opinion. She's been suspended for different reasons. I don't understand some of it, but I don't think it has anything to do with medical reasons. It might be medical, but it's not like she's being suspended for drugs or anything like that. So hopefully they will fix that. The other thing they're doing wrong, one of their other top names that they have is Allie. And instead of wrestling, she's now a valet to her husband's subpar tag team in the company. And the thing is, I like the new persona that Allie is doing. It's called the Bunny, and she's a dominatrix with bunny ears. Looks interesting, but she really should be competing and not just valeting for her husband's tag team. That doesn't really mean much of anything. So because of this, I think the women's division is probably the worst women's division between all the major U.S.-based wrestling promotions. Another thing that AEW does wrong is they keep trying to cram Kenny Omega and the Bucks, the Elite, down our throats every week, while keeping the rest of their roster off national television and forcing the audience to watch their YouTube show, AEW Dark, to see the rest of the roster. And half the time, if you watch AEW Dark, those people are facing off against the Bucks or Omega on that show too. And of course, they're losing the matches. Not good. Yes, I understand that Omega and the Bucks are co-executive vice presidents, and they're supposedly the big draw guys on the payroll, but they don't need to be so at the expense of everyone else on the roster. And they've got a lot of young talent that needs to be coached up and needs to be getting some national TV time. And if they're not ready, and that's why they're on AEW Dark, then there was a problem in hiring them onto the payroll in the first place. So that needs to be addressed and corrected. They also have some very bad storylines with supernatural overtones. I already mentioned Brandy Rhodes with Awesome Kong, but also this sort of weird faction tag team called the Dark Order. They're so bad that they're comical, but they're not comical. To a lot of people, they're comical. To me, they're just annoying. um, uh, I don't have much tolerance for really bad stuff being a comedy skit routine on wrestling shows. If you're doing something on purpose that's supposed to be comical and you do it well, I can do okay with that, but not when you're not when you're just annoying. Um, Speaking of comedy wrestlers, the two other persons I showed earlier photos of, um, there's too many of those type of characters in AEW, and they cannot and should not be taken seriously as performers, at least not as how they're being presented in the company right now. They're more grating to me. And I think to a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people online complain about these performers, specifically Orange Cassidy, also known as Pockets, because he's always sticking his hands in his pockets of his jeans and pretending to do kick strikes and um, other silly moves that aren't, you're barely touching the other opponent. And the other opponent's just looking at him like, what are you doing? What is this? What's going on? Why am I wasting my time here? And it's supposed to be funny, but it's just like, what's the point of this? And so he comes across as incredibly lame and stupid as a character to watch. And I think that's sad because the reality is, I think he probably has a lot more ability, but because he's doing this shtick, we're not seeing it. And I'd like to see something happen where he gets booked, where he stops doing that and actually just becomes like a super technician or something, and starts, he'll joke with you until you hit the button or something, and he tears you a new behind or something. That's what I'd like to see that character become, but I don't think he will, unfortunately. Another is the Marco Stunt character, who so far is the most noticeable thing I've noticed about him so far, is that during an interview with the group he's with, the Jurassic Express, there was a female interviewer interviewing them, and he kept reaching up, trying to pull her dress down while his tag team partners pull him aside like he's supposed to be some sort of mentally challenged kid or something. And I thought that was disgusting. I don't care about the guy's size. A lot of people are saying he's just undersized because he's 5'2" and he weighs like 135 pounds and he doesn't belong in the ring. Well, I'm sorry, but many, many years ago, back in the early 90s, I wrestled semi-professionally at 5'5" at 141 pounds. And I don't think that size is the issue. I think it's the kid's character and what they're making him do as that character. That's the problem, not his size. There's a lot of smaller wrestlers in this company. He needs to get some muscle mass more on him, and he does need to show me he can actually do something other than just be like a sidekick nuisance or something, because that's what he's being presented as. So that needs to get corrected. So there's that. Here's what I think AEW needs to do, though, for 2020 to improve their show. I would scrap Kenny Omega as Booker for the women's division. Get the belt off Riho because, like I said, she's too small. And put it on Awesome Kong with Nyla Rose, Britt Baker, and Hikaru Shida chasing it. I'd also make Allie do much more as a singles competitor than in the persona of the bunny that she's playing currently, rather than just be the valet to her husband's tag team, which is so non-memorable I can't even remember the tag team's name. The next thing that's really bad that they really need to do with AEW is teach the tag teams how to do proper tag team matches and how to pace matches properly. They got a lot of guys that just don't seem to follow the rules of traditional tag team wrestling. The Young Bucks, the Lucha Brothers, Hybrid 2, especially, but because of what they do also teams that do know what they're doing, like Best Friends and Inner Circle Tag Team, Proud and Powerful, Santana and Ortiz. They're all doing spot fests and using weapons, and it's crap as a result. And even their world champion Chris Jericho has publicly lambasted, specifically the Lucha Brothers, but really he's really taken it an exception to the entire tag division on this issue publicly, and telling them get your act together and do it right, because you're hurting the brand. So I agree with Chris on that, and I think that they've got the people to teach that, because one of their head coach, they got two head coaches, so to speak, three of them actually. They've got Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, who used to be the Horsemen, one of the biggest tag teams of the 80s and early 90s, as coaching there. And they've got Dustin Reynolds, Gold Dust, Cody Rhodes' brother, who was also a tag team specialist in the 80s at WCW. There's no reason why these guys can't be taught how to do tag teams right. So I want to see that in the future for 2020 for them. I think that more of the AEW dark matches need to be on the regular TV show. And the bad storylines like the Dark Order and the Brandy Rhodes Kong supernatural stuff needs to go. Like I said, I don't want comedy routines in my show unless they're really going to wrestle. And I don't have a problem with I'd rather they built a smaller weight class division for guys like Marco Stunt, for guys like Orange Cassidy, who are who are in the 135 to 190 pound range, under the 200 pound range. In fact, I welcome that, because in my opinion, having wrestled myself, there's ways to do it, and it makes it look more sports centric rather than the entertainment side of things, and which would go a lot further to present what they're trying to present with the win-loss records and make it look more like a sporting event. Having the different weight classes would be more traditional wrestling, like it would be collegiate wrestling, and other promotions that are some of the better promotions in the world have a junior weight class division. So that's what I think they need to do for those guys, and build that up. The next thing I would do is get the next lower tier championship title staged and running in the stories. They need a TV title that gets defended every week for their second tier level of the roster. And I don't care who holds the belt. It can be Pac, it could be Hangman Page, it could be Sammy Guevara, it could be Christopher Daniels, it can be Dustin Rhodes for a while. There's a lot of people on that roster who could easily carry a second tier championship belt and give another storyline and give their wrestlers something to do. And so that's pretty much what I think about AEW. Overall, I'm giving them a B, like a 3 out of 5 stars for the year. For a first year, they've done very well, but they've got a little bit more focus to do, a little more getting away from the Bucks and Cody, getting away from the Jericho thing, and building other storylines to build a full program schedule that will get the viewers and get the ratings, not only just to beat WWE in the Wednesday Night Wars, which I'll get to in a minute, or when we get to the WWE at the end of the show, I'll talk a little bit more about that whole situation. But they need to build that more. And I don't know if they're going to be able to do that, given that the elite are the producers of the show, so to speak, as executive vice presidents, and they're booking things. And I don't really think that they're the guys who should be. I really think that the coaches and their managerial back guys like Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard and Dean Malenko should be booking these, and with the Rhodes brothers. And the Rhodes brothers should be booking it because of the experience they have, not just as wrestlers, but the fact that their father, the late Dusty Rhodes, booked wrestling for close to 35 years. So they understand booking. I really don't think that Omega and the Bucks really get it yet. They're not bad talented, but there's a difference between being wrestlers and being agents and booking shows properly. So hopefully that'll be a little more addressed with AEW in 2020. Our next show, our next company rather, is Impact Wrestling. Their world champion is Sally Callahan. Their X Division champion, which is their cruiserweight type champion, is Ace Austin. Their knockouts, or women's champion, is Taya Valkyrie. And their tag team champions are the North. Some of their other key players are Tessa Blanchard, Michael Elgin, Eddie Edwards, and Brian Cage. They've got quite a few others, but these are the ones that I actually respect that are on the current roster. The thing about Impact is what Impact does right. That's a good question. Honestly, I don't think that they do anything right. I can't answer that. What do they do right with a straight face? They've got good producers with some valid experience. They've got Tommy Dreamer, they got Petey Williams, they got Don Callis and Scott D'Amore. But the problem with Impact is they've been faltering for years with ownership issues. They've gone through multiple owners fighting over different percentages of ownership. They lost their TV deal with Spike TV several years ago when they were TNA Impact Wrestling. The original owner, Jeff Jarrett, went into legal battle with them. They formed a different group called Global Force that was sort of them, but not them. And it just got really a mess. And they never could really keep a TV deal that was serious until Anthem, the new company that owns them, bought them out about 2 years ago. And now they've acquired not just TV slot, they actually acquired a TV network. They acquired Access TV. So Anthem owns Access TV. So now they're going to presumably be solid and have a regular time slot, which will be on Saturdays. Now, it was on Tuesdays, but because of the deal that they did to New Japan, which I'll get into when we talk about New Japan, they're going to move to Saturdays now. And so their company is in a wait and see mode for me right now. But what did they do wrong? Ooh, now that we can talk. In my opinion, most everything. A better question might be asked, what are they not doing wrong? One of the big problems I have with their company is they have way too many hardcore wrestlers. And by hardcore, I mean they do these matches that's always about weapons. It's always about throwing people through tables, throwing people through windows, all sorts of stupid stuff that is not healthy for the wrestlers. It's not real wrestling. It's just a fight, and it looks dumb. They've changed some of the best technical wrestlers on the planet, someone like Eddie Edwards, into a thug who just beats everyone up with chairs, chains, and Singapore canes, completely undermining years of hard work and character development that performer put into his career. Now he's just like this thug who comes out in jeans and a t-shirt and a baseball cap with a cane, just starts whacking the people with a cane. Just no, not cool. um, the other their world champion that I mentioned to you guys before, Sammy Callahan. I'll go ahead and give you another quick look at him again. Just give me a second. As you can see, that's Callahan's right there. That is a kind of a flak jacket that he wears. He wears it all throughout the match. He never takes it off. And he's always doing these hardcore matches. Well, and talking about how he's a thug and he's a tough guy and all this stuff. And it's like, really? You're such a tough guy that you have to wear a flak jacket to the ring and wear it during your match because you're too much of a pussy to take a real man's beating? That's what I think of the guy. I have no use for this performer at all because of stuff like that. And not only that, but the next problem with Impact, and this is not just from myself, but a lot of people who don't like this particular setup for Impact is they keep booking Tessa Blanchard, who I showed you the female, and I guess I should show it again. There's Tessa. They keep booking her against guys like Brian Cage on the right, against Sammy Callahan, one-on-one matches, hardcore matches where she can use weapons, they can use weapons on her, and it's just ridiculous. I mean, Tessa is amazing wrestler, very young. I think she's only like maybe 24, 25 years old. She's probably, and I think she's one of the top 3 wrestlers, female wrestlers on the planet. And I know she can wrestle guys because she started training by wrestling guys, including Cage as one of them. I get that. But she's 5'5", 125 pounds. And she's taking on Cage, who's like 6'5", 290, and she's taking on Callahan with his flak jacket and stuff. And it just looks really, really bad, in my opinion. It looks bad because if she beats them, they look like wimps. Like a little girl beats you up. It looks bad if they beat her up because this guy's beating on women. And it also looks bad for her as a women's wrestler because if she can beat the guys, then there should be nobody in the women's division that should be able to hold a candle to her. And yet she does lose women's matches every so often. She also competes in another company called Wow Women of Wrestling, where she just lost the world title in that company to another person who goes by the character called the Beast, and we'll talk. And so, and that person would be more likely to be akin to wrestle some of these other guys because she's like 5'8" and weighs 160 and looks like a shredded bodybuilder. The Beast does, but still. Come on. So that is a problem, I think, for that, for them. The other key thing that they've been doing right along for years is they keep letting go of all their top talent for whatever reason. And probably part of it was they just didn't have the money coming in because they didn't have TV revenue when they didn't have a TV deal. But they lost some major talent over the years. They lost AJ Styles, they lost Bobby Roode, they lost Samoa Joe, they lost James Storm, Eli Drake, Ethan Carter III, and then they keep, like I said, they keep Sammy Callahan, and I just no, he's supposed to be this tough, hardcore thug wrestler whom Tessa Blanchard knocks the crap out of. I just no, no, he just has no legitimacy to me. I'm sorry. That's the guy they booked to be the world champion. It just doesn't work for me, and I don't think it works for a lot of people. I hope that gets corrected. The other thing that they did really, really wrong is when the parent company, Anthem Productions, acquired Access TV in 2019. Um, well, first off, let's just point out the fact that TNA Impact has gone through 3 network agreements and botched them and lost them. So I guess they had to have a choice but to buy a network so that they could just air their show at all. But the first thing that they did, and like I said, we're going to talk a little bit more about this with New Japan, was kill New Japan's TV deal with Access, which was supposed to run through the 2021. By doing that, they took off really the only valid competitor to WWE. And I'll tell you why when we talk about New Japan. They don't have any more New Japan programming in America now. You have to go online to watch New Japan, which is really a shame. But that was a big mistake on Impact's fault. And I think they did it on purpose. I think they wanted the Saturday slot that they had the agreement with New Japan for. And they tried to bully them and say, well, if you want to keep your program, you have to book our wrestlers and do a cross-promotional deal with us. And Impact is so badly managed. New Japan wanted nothing to do with them, with those. In fact, and not necessarily with the wrestlers themselves, because they've had Michael Elgin in New Japan. They could have done some cross-promotional people over there. I'm sure they would have liked to have had Brian Cage over there. But overall, I just don't see. I don't think where New Japan would have liked to really have handled bringing those guys in, because they just don't seem to have the same ability or quality of talent level that New Japan or some of the other promotions have. So, what do we do, and what does Impact need to do in order to improve in 2020? First thing you got to do is make us care about their roster. They currently have 36 male wrestlers on their roster, 5 of which I would consider watchable, 7 of whom used to be watchable, but they've gone past their prime, and they can't put on the same level of matches they once could. And you could even make an argument that they should be retired from wrestling entirely. Unfortunately, the rest of their roster, especially the men's style roster, just plain sucks. I mean, they miss spots. They are out of sync on doing timing for match wrestling. Just a lot of stuff wrong with them. Wouldn't even have them in the wrestling company, but I guess they got to keep them to keep somebody who they can afford. Second thing to do is stop letting go everybody who's actually worth a damn and letting them walk out. Now, I understand. I got to be fair. Like I said, they didn't have a TV deal. A lot of these guys, they let go to other companies, probably because they just couldn't afford to pay them. But nevertheless, some of these guys didn't walk over to AEW or WWE for big money. They went to other smaller promotions. They were willing to go to Ring of Honor. They were willing to go to NWA rather than worry about dealing with this company. I think that speaks volumes as to the mismanagement of what Impact has gone through over the last few years. Number 3 is stop booking Tessa Blanchard against the men. She's not Chyna at 6'1", 190 pounds. She's not Beth Phoenix, who is 5'8" or 5'9", 165 pounds. She's 5'5", 125 pounds. And she has zero business competing against men who are 250 to 300 pounds and defeating them. When she beats the guys, they look like imbeciles. When the women then turn around and beat her, it makes her and the guys, it just makes everything look unrealistic. Mm-hmm. If you want to have women wrestling against the men, get Jessica Havoc, get Awesome Kong, get Nyla Rose, who's transgender woman wrestler. A guy who then transitioned into a woman. Let her wrestle the guys if you want, but not Tessa Blanchard. You're ruining a performer who is just, I mean, honestly, like I said, I think she's one of the top 3 women in the world for wrestling right now. But I just think they're just really ruining her potential, and that really just aggravates me to no end in that respect. Other things that they need to do. Um, let me see here. Here we go. They need to legitimately build their women's knockouts division. Uh, it's the only division that Impact has that's really strong. You got Tessa Blanchard, Taya Valkyrie, Rosemary, Kiera Hogan, who is jobbing way too much in Impact when she's a tag team champion and a singles champion in 2 other promotions as a female wrestler. Tennille Dashwood, who was a WWE competitor, Madison Rayne, who's a very experienced veteran, Angelina Love, experienced veteran. And since they have WOW Women of Wrestling, which is where Kiera Hogan's a tag team title holder, with a joint contract with Anthem owning Access TV and having that company now being under the Access Anthem umbrella, they should be able to bring over Erica Porter, aka Jungle Girl. They should be able to bring over the Beast, who is now that's the person who just beat Tessa over in Women of Wrestling WOW for the world title. And bring back Diamante Adrenaline, who is Kiera Hogan's tag team partner over in WOW. This roster lineup, if done right and booked right, could really show up the entire WWE women's locker room if booked right and done and given the spotlight that they should, because they've got the potential to do it. The number 5 thing that they need to do is they need to get some of the guys that they lost to NWA or New Japan back, if possible. They're not going to get their guys back from AEW or WWE. There's too much money being paid. But they need to get guys like Nick Aldis Magnus, who's the NWA World Champion. They need to get James Storm, who went over to NWA, back. They need to get Eli Drake back. They might be able to get EC3 maybe when he gets recovered from whatever injury he's off for, but from back from the WWE. But I kind of doubt it. They should get Lance Archer out of New Japan. There's quite a few guys that they need to start building this up. And they need to go to New Japan and not try to bully them and try to work a better deal with them instead of doing what they've done. That's really killed them. And I think it's really, I know it's ticked me off because now there's no New Japan, and that's, that burns me on that. And that really burns me on their brand as a result, since they're responsible for it. Let's see. The next group is Lucha Underground. Their current world champion is Jake Strong, also known as Jack Swagger when he was in the WWE, also known as Jake Hager in AEW. They don't have a women's division, so they don't have a women's champion. They have a Gift of the Gods championship. It's vacant. It's more like, it's not really a championship. It's more like, it's more like having one of those briefcases in WWE. You turn it in for a world title shot if you get that. And they have 3-man tag team champions, the Reptile Tribe, which is their trios champions. That's their tag team. And the truth is, I really don't watch Lucha much. I don't get El Rey Network where it's on, but I have seen a few episodes on the on the internet, and I wasn't particularly thrilled with them. Um, I didn't think it was very well produced, and they've had a lot of issues with some of their wrestlers. Guess they did illegal contracts trying to force the wrestlers and say that they were exclusive to Lucha Underground when they weren't paying them enough to make a living, and then they were trying to get them to not be able to do appearances at other companies that they were booked for. And they filed lawsuit against Lucha Underground. These wrestlers did, and they won. So I think that's probably going to put Lucha Underground into some other territories, and I'm not so sure if they're going to come back for their next season as a result, because they're getting a lot of negative things, and that's part of why Jake Hager, who is their champion, is on AEW, but he's not wrestling. He's the kind of like the bodyguard for Chris Jericho right now, is because of that kind of a weird contractual thing. But if Lucha does go out for season 3, then Jake will probably become a regular at AEW as a full-time performer. Let's see. But other than that, I really don't have much to say about Lucha. I don't know what they can do that can improve, because I just, I really don't know. The next one, next two actually, are Major League Wrestling and Pro Wrestling Noah. I've never seen either of their shows. They don't have any syndication in my area, and I'm not. Again, it's more like you can find them online, but I'm not very good at looking all that stuff up all the time. But I did do some research. And I looked at some of their matches and some of their lineups and their rosters of talent, and they utilize a lot of the same talent that AEW does, but their key guys aren't on the AEW roster. And I would hope that in the future they can get some of those guys to come to AEW in the future, specifically Minoru Tanaka, Davey Boy Smith Jr., Alex Hammerstone, Low Keith, Von Erickson, Brian Pillman Jr. I think, though, that some of these guys are probably going to end up going to WWE or even NWA if they leave MLW rather than go to AEW. Again, there's kind of like pecking order and click stuff going on. If it was just Cody running AEW and it didn't have the Bucks and Omega running things with him, I think a lot of these guys would already be at AEW right now. I don't think MLW would even exist. I think almost all their guys would be over in AEW right now. But because of Omega and the Bucks, they don't really want to go over there because they don't want to deal with them, and that's understandable. But it it speaks something to what's going on in the business right now. That brings us to New Japan Pro Wrestling. They just had their most recent pay-per-view or major event, Wrestle Kingdom 14, this past weekend. And their world champion and intercontinental champion, first time this has ever happened with both belts held by the same wrestler, is Tetsuya Naito. The U.S. champion is Jon Moxley. That's the same Jon Moxley that works in AEW. The tag champions are Finn Juice. Now, Finn Juice is David Finlay and Juice Robinson, but they call themselves Finn Juice. The junior heavyweight champion is Hiromu Takahashi, which is the guy in the top right corner there. He just came back from a major neck surgery. We thought that he was possibly going to have to retire. It was that severe, but luckily he's able to come back, and he's a much beloved member in the New Japan community. The new tag team champions of the junior division is Roppongi 3K, Yo and Sho. The never openweight champion is Hiroki Goto. And the never six-man tag champions are Los Ingobernables de Japón, which is the same group that Naito and Hiromu are from, but it's three other members: Evil, Bushi, and Takahashi, I think is the other guy's name off the top of my head. Some of their other key players are Sonata. Sonata is actually a member of Losing LIJ. Nobody can pronounce Ingobernables. Yeah, so we just call him LIJ. He's one of their better top tier wrestlers. Kota Ibushi, who is like one of their top, he's a top three guy next to Okada, Kazuchika Okada, who's in the far right. It's Naito, Okada, and Ibushi are probably their top three guys right now. Sonata's probably number 4, and Tanahashi has been their ace, been their number 1 guy for a long time, but he's getting up there in years. He's in his mid to late 40s, and it's time for him to start moving well down into the mid card and maybe even towards retirement, because he's had some major injuries in recent years. But Tanahashi's good. Zack Sabre Jr. and Will Ospreay are the top guys in their they're top Gaijin members, I guess you could say right now. The top American, only they're not American, they're Brits, but top non-Japanese wrestlers in the company, and they're both in the junior heavyweight division. And then there's Kenta, who you guys may know from the WWE as Hideo Itome. But Kenta just came back over to New Japan and became a villain. And Kenta actually just attacked Naito after Naito won the 2 belts. So there probably will be a rivalry between Kenta and Naito soon. Now, what does New Japan do right? Well, I'm going to be a little bit biased here on this. They do almost everything right. They are exactly the opposite of Impact Wrestling and exactly the opposite of what WWE is. And by that, I mean, they're not the most popular or largest company, which would be a WWE. But in terms of the overall roster, the way they book their roster, the way they make each title matter, and they can keep their audiences interested in just about any and every match, no matter who the participants are in the match, whether or not a title is on the line during the match, is so far above every other company's way of doing business. It's like night and day. Like I said, they just had their latest major promotional event, Wrestle Kingdom 14, this past weekend. Every champion I just showed you, they just won. They did a complete turnover of all their champions for the show. That's generally unheard of in any promotion at any given time. And when they do these type of transitions, because WWE does do them, since the IWGP New Japan group is only that one group and doesn't have a red brand and a gold brand and a blue brand and have 50 million champions running around, it doesn't seem that it matters more. It's more believable. So there's that. The other thing is they listen to the audience at New Japan. And when popular performers are over with the audience, they properly reward that wrestler instead of trying to enforce their own personal preferences the way a WWE does, which alienates the audience. And, many of you guys have heard them boo John Cena. They keep pushing him. You've heard them boo Roman Reigns. You've heard them boo, all kinds of different wrestlers because they're bored with them or they just don't like them. If that was going on, legitimately being booed, that wrestler in New Japan would either be kicked down to the training level again to come back later and be repackaged and redone, or they would be gone. I'm not kidding. That's just how New Japan. You stay a young boy in their developmental division until you're ready, and if they screw it up, they'll keep you in that division until you're ready again. But that's the way it is. On their American broadcasts that have been on Access TV the last 2 years, they don't have any skits or talking to speak of. There's no backstage interviews directly between a female interviewer and a wrestler like you always see in WWE or AEW or Impact. Now, part of that is because these guys speak Japanese, they don't speak English, so they're not doing that. But more importantly, and I think it's not just the American TV, I think this is how they do it in Japan as well. They treat it more like a professional sports interview segment. What they do is they'll either have the people speak right after a match when they've won, or they'll go back to the stage and to a certain area, and it'll be like when they interview the coach after a game, or interview players in the NBA or NFL or the like after a game. That's what they do instead. Where there's like several people and photographers, and it feels more like a sporting event rather than sports drama entertainment. And I think that's a better way to do it, in my opinion. I just prefer that. It just feels more realistic as a sport to me that way. And they're a very smart company. They've been very smart over the years to bring in non-Japanese talents to promote the brand. They had AJ Styles. They had Finn Balor when he was Prince Devitt. They've had Jeff Cobb, Kenny Omega, Chris Jericho, Samoa Joe, quite a few other guys over the years that have promoted over there very well. They also know when to let go of talent, to let them go to other promotions. They let go of Finn Balor and AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura and Carl Anderson and Carl Anderson's partner, who's part of the OC in the WWE now. They had Kenny Omega, Young Bucks, Cody Rhodes. But they let go of Finn, AJ, Shinsuke, Carl, and the other guy almost all at once. And they let Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks and Cody Rhodes and LIJ and Okada and Ibushi and some of these other guys step up and take the spot that those guys have been the lead dogs of the show. They let the other guys come up and take over. Now, because Omega and Bucks and Rhodes and some of the others got a little bit of ego, and they decided to go form AEW in America because New Japan didn't want to promote some of their other guys. That's part of why they formed AEW. New Japan said, go. It's okay. They were prepared for that. And they had Jay White. They had Juice Robinson. They got Will Ospreay. They got Sonata. They got Kenta back from WWE. They got Hiromu back. They got Taiji Ishimori back from Impact. They got Zack Sabre Jr. They got all these guys. It's just a stacked roster that is just really, the parity is there, and it's better than anybody else's roster. And every time that they do this kind of turnover, their product improves. So they got to know, they got a system that works. And they're smart enough to cross promote with Ring of Honor and NWA and other stuff, partly to keep an American presence, but also to scout these other companies so that when these other guys get a little uppity and they want to go back to America because they can get more money or they can get better, whatever, they can let them go and say, hey, we got slots. Come over here now and build your brand in Japan. That's why they do that, and they do a great job at it. Now, there are things, as much as I love New Japan, I think New Japan's the best company in the world right now. They do not do everything perfectly. They don't have a women's division, or if there isn't a women's division, it is not being presented on American television. I don't know if that, I can't say that has anything to do with Japanese culture, because there's a huge contingent of female Japanese wrestlers across multiple promotions elsewhere. So I don't know exactly why New Japan doesn't seem to have a women's division or why it's not being presented in American television. But if they don't have one, they need to build one. And if they have one, then they need to promote it better and get it showing it. Of course, losing the Access TV deal was a major blow to the company. I don't know where the fault lies, whether it's New Japan was just um, annoyed enough with Anthem Impact taking away their 1 year that they had left on their contract agreement with Access TV, or if it was just Anthem and Impact being assholes. I'm going to guess that it was probably the latter far more than the former, but either way, it hurt New Japan. And it hurt American audiences who like New Japan because now you can only watch them um, through streaming online. And that you have to pay for. And maybe you'll see them on cross promotion events on Ring of Honor, or you'll see them on Impact or something maybe. But those are usually typically pay-per-view events as well. So I think that's really going to hurt them for the immediate future. And I think that's a shame. Personally, I would love to see New Japan and AEW team up, but given how there seems to be a rift between and New Japan and elite management, I wouldn't hold my breath. But I really wish that there would be something going on there, because I'd like to see some of these smaller guys that are in AEW go to New Japan and learn strong style. I think you take somebody like Orange Cassidy over in strong style, New Japan, he's either going to have to get his act together or get out of the biz. Same thing with Marco Stunt. Jack Perry, who is Luke Perry's son, actor Luke Perry's son, who's over in AEW as, I can't remember, Jungle Boy, Jack Perry. Jungle Boy would be a good guy for the cruiserweight division, the junior heavyweight division over there, wrestling against guys like Will Ospreay and Zack Sabre and Taiji Ishimori. I think that's where he belongs right now, rather than in AEW myself, but that's just my opinion. But if they could get a cross promotion of those two companies, I think it would be beneficial for both. But what they need to do to improve in 2020 is they need to get another American TV deal to replace the one they have with Access TV. I don't know how they're going to do that. I don't know who would want him. I don't know. They need to build up and represent a women's division that is shown on American broadcasts. They need more cross-pollination between brands where their top guys are invading American promotions. Specifically, LIJ and Suzuki-gun stables, because they're just the two strongest stables that they've got. That would be good for an invasion angle. And they need to rebrand the Bullet Club into something new. That faction has lost all their stars, which was the elite that are now the head of AEW. Marty Scurll has been able to do Villain Club. AJ Styles and Carl Anderson and his partner have become the OC because they were the original Bullet Club. Now they're the OC, the original club, only one that matters, blah, blah, blah. Finn Balor, who was another member of the original Bullet Club, is now Balor Club. And the actual Bullet Club is more akin to the NWO now. It's like, old hat, done. So I think they need to rebrand that and make it something new. That can reignite and excite the brand there a little bit. I think the only reason they're keeping Bullet Club as Bullet Club is because they have like 2 or 3 members of the original club in the Gorillas of Destiny and Big Bad Luck Fale are still there in New Japan, and it's like their club now. But the thing is, those guys were like the 3rd tier level that nobody gave a damn about. So now they're Bullet Club. Okay, who cares? It's almost what's happening there. So, I think they'd be better off to build something different with those guys. But I think they're keeping them Bullet Club just because the name brand, they don't want to let it go out of fashion and end up having to sell it off or have other people selling it. through the other guys that made it popular to begin with. The next group that we should talk about a little bit is the National Wrestling Alliance. They've been around for a long time, and they've probably had about 30 different owners. They've been around since, the 30s. They used to be originally what became World Championship Wrestling. It went from NWA to NWA, WCW, and then NWA left and was small promotion while WCW was the major promotion before Vince McMahon bought them out in the late 90s. But the NWA brand was still separate, and they've had their title, and they've been kind of a regional group for a long time, and they're now coming back to television. Their world champion is Nick Aldis, who was also known as Magnus in TNA. Good wrestler. Their U.S. national champion just came in, Aaron Stevens. That's the guy on the top right. He is kind of like their U.S. Like I say, he's their U.S. champ. You probably know him as Damian Sandow in the WWE. Their World TV Championship is vacant right now. Their women's champion is Allison Kay. She's been in Impact under a different name. I can't remember the name of that she used in Impact. Good wrestler, tall, relatively a larger girl. She's like 5'10", 160, I think. She looks like she outsizes most of the wrestlers in the female division, but she's just a decent sized woman. And currently, the joke of the company is the World Tag Team Champion, which is the Rock and Roll Express. Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson, who are 63 and 61 years old, respectively, and I would call them more the Geriatric Express rather than the Rock and Roll Express. They're just that's just one of the worst things there. But they do have a lot of key performers. They got Eli Drake from Impact. They got Ken Anderson from Impact. They got James Storm from Impact. They got Colt Cabana, who also does stuff for Ring of Honor. Tim Storm, who's been there. He's been there. He was their big guy for NWA through the last two transitions of ownerships. But he's getting up there in years. He's in his mid-50s. He's a good-looking guy in good shape for his mid-50s. I think he's 54 or 55. And he lost the title over to just a second, to Nick Aldis. I wanted to call him Magnus because that's what I remember him as more. I can't remember his real name. But he lost the title to Nick Aldis, and they're still trying to figure out what to do with him as a character. James Storm used to be the U.S. belt holder. Then Colt Cabana had it. Now Aaron Stevens, I believe, beat Colt. But the WWE, former WWE Women's Champion Melina just came into the company as a kind of a manager of two other women in the group, but she'll also probably be wrestling, I suspect. At least I hope so, because she certainly still has the ability. And Marty Scurll, who is probably one of the best cruiserweights right now in the world. Marty's been at Ring of Honor and New Japan, and just really making a name for himself the past few years. So NWA is doing some pretty good in getting their roster set up. Mm-hmm. Now, that's one of the things they do right. Now, the thing is with NWA is they don't have a TV deal. They're not on regular television. They're only on the internet right now. They do have had cross promotions. Most recently, they had one with Ring of Honor, but that's expired. Um, I don't know if they're going to do any with AEW or MLW. Probably do have one with MLW. But that being said, they have a very limited budget and only online programming. And since they only have that, they seem to have acquired a very solid roster of talent that are willing to work with this company and start building a brand that hopefully will eventually get enough credibility to have a TV deal. They have legitimate titles that are historically significant because the NWA has been around for so long. And they book decent enough matchups and storylines for those titles, unlike the other companies who tend to focus only on the major belts. Again, we're talking about WWE there a little bit. They've got so many different world titles in the WWE and so many second and third tier titles, and yet they can't do anything with them. And then they can't make anybody care, and I'll explain that with the WWE in a little bit. And NWA does do team up with other promotions and defend their titles in other promotions like Ring of Honor, MLW, and New Japan. That's a smart way to get your brand out without spending money on TV deals. But again, like I said, the Ring of Honor deal just ended. I don't know, since New Japan doesn't have an American TV deal, how much longer that's going to go. It looks like they're going to be focusing on their online YouTube weekly series Power, NWA Power Wrestling. They try to keep their interview time short and outside of the ring instead of allowing their wrestlers to run off at the mouth for 10 or 20 minutes on a skit. I like that. It's one of the things I hate most about WWE. And their programs have an old school traditional wrestling show feel to it. Now, this has kind of like been a double-edged sword for NWA. Some people think it's a detriment because it kind of has a sort of mid to late 1980s feel to it, the way the NWA shows had when they were on TBS before Ted Turner bought the company out and made it into WCW. The production levels are a little bit clunky, a little bit iffy. It feels a little bit old. But I think if the production levels could be brought up to the AEW, WWE levels, I think it's probably the best way to do a wrestling show as far as doing an hour-long, non-traveling, show. It's very much like, I guess the way I could put it is NXT and WWE with their if they do a 1 hour show, or before they did the NXT live on Wednesdays, they were doing NXT 1 hour shows on the WWE network. And it was in a specific location that they did every episode was in a certain location, Full Sail University. And it's an hour, and it's kind of like NXT is like the modern version of what NWA does, and NWA is more old school. That's the best way I can differentiate between the two. Now, like I mentioned a little bit ago, they have a really bad tag team division, and arguably the biggest mistake they've made recently is book the Rock and Roll Express as their champions. I'm not trying to diss Ricky or Robert. I have nothing but utmost respect for those guys. For guys who are 63 and 61 years old, respectively, they're amazing. Some of the stuff that they do in the ring, especially Ricky. I mean, he's doing Canadian Destroyer flip pile drivers and other stuff that it's like, wait a minute, if he can do that at 63, it looks kind of funny that he can do it while the younger guys can't. But I don't know. It looks weird. It breaks the believability factor, I guess you could say, the common sense factor. It's kind of like the Tessa Blanchard fighting the guys thing. Just they're a little too old for it. And I think that those two should officially retire from in-ring performing. And I think that they need to build a real tag division again. Um, so they need to build. That's the one of their things that they do wrong is they don't have a strong tag division. They need to build one. But I think that it's hard to do that when most of the companies don't have all that great of strong tag divisions, and WWE's buying up every talent they can, and it's difficult. So I'm not going to knock them too much for it. But the big problem, I think, was putting the crossover promotion with Ring of Honor this past summer to focus on the online programming, because Ring of Honor is hurting, and I think it would have really built both brands up more if they had more cross promotion between the two programs, and had those guys on Ring of Honor's Syndicate weekly show, and then had the ROH guys coming into NWA as well. But that's just my opinion. Things that they can do better in 2020. Well, they got to build up the tag division and women's divisions. They need to rotate their weekly power hour programming a bit more, so that each belt gets a proper storyline featured, with the world title and tag titles featured the same week, and the TV and women's titles the opposite week. That's how I would book it. That's how I would write it. I would get some of the cross promotions for more TV airtime back. I would utilize some of the other promotions rosters as enhancement talent for them. Get them and get your stuff going there. Get some people interested in coming to work for you. And whenever it's decided to have Nick Aldis drop the belt, make certain that Tim Storm is brought back into the world title storyline again, because what they've done with that situation is Nick and Tim had a match, and if Tim lost, he'd never get a world title shot again, at least while Nick was champion. And they've been writing Tim Storm like he doesn't know what he's going to do with his life now, because he's no longer the world champion. He's 55, and he should be retiring, and blah 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 blah. And yes, he is up there in years. But he's never been on a major promotion that I'm aware of, and I think he deserves a solid television push, and make him a TV champion. Make him the national champion or something. Do something with him. And when the next guy who takes Aldis down says, "Hey, I'll give you a title shot," but do something with Tim Storm. Is what I'm suggesting there. The next company is Ring of Honor, which we've been talking a little bit about. Their world champion is PCO, who you may remember as in the WWE as one of the Rougeau LA brothers or something like that. And he's up there in his late 50s, early 60s, and should be retired. But he's just become the new world champion recently, like in the last month or so. The world TV champion is Dragon Lee. The world tag team champions are Jay Lethal and Jonathan Gresham. I couldn't fit Gresham's photo in here to make it look right, so I just put Jay Lethal, because Lethal is actually kind of like the face of the company anyway. The world six-man tag team champions are Marty Scurll, who I've already talked about over in NWA, because he just went over to NWA. PCO and Brody King, and I believe that Brody is also over in NWA now with Marty as the tag champs, or facing off against the tag champs as Villain Enterprises against Rock and Roll Express. And their women's champion is Kelly Klein. Some of their other key performers include Mandy Leone, who's really not much of a wrestler. She's just kind of like, I don't know. She's more of a. I've seen her wrestle, but it's very rare, and she's usually just doing commentary type stuff. They got Angelina Love in Ring of Honor. Their women's division really isn't that strong, unfortunately. Their best person is Kelly Klein, and I would love to see her go to AEW or Impact and start tearing up people over there instead. Um, their best guys are probably Matt Taven, Dalton Castle, and Jeff Cobb. Roosh and Bandito are two of their guys that are from the Mexican faction, Mexican promotion that they do business with. I don't know if it's CMLL or AAA down in Mexico, but they're kind of cross promotional guys over there. Roosh was champion for a while. I think he's the one that dropped it to PCO. Um, and the Briscoe brothers are their really their top tag team, but they're getting old, and I've never been really a fan of theirs. Now, what they do right, um, well, they do a lot of things right for a small company. Um, they do cross promotion well with multiple promotions, such as New Japan, CMLL, and AAA wrestling out of Mexico, and until recently, the NWA. Again, they don't waste a lot of time doing long-winded interviews or promo segments, and when they do, it's usually done just to get the audience to booing to push the heels. The heels, for those of you who are watching who don't know wrestling, although if you're watching in over an hour and you should know what wrestling is, the heels are the bad guys. Anyway, they've really kind of managed to be a gateway company to both up and comers at the beginning of their careers when they're moving up towards WWE. Guys like Colt Cabana, CM Punk, Samoa Joe, Daniel Bryan, various others, AJ Styles have all gone through Ring of Honor. And they've also become a landing spot when WWE dumps the talent, even though they can still work, which would be PCO, Bully Ray, um, yeah. He's right now he's going by PJ Black, but I forget what he used to be in WWE. But I liked him in WWE. He was one of the yeah. Hold on a second. Let me look him up real quick. He was known in he was known as Justin Gabriel in WWE a while back. But he's getting he looks a lot older than he is at his age. Unfortunately, he's getting gray in the beard and stuff, and he's only 38, but he's a good guy. But anyway, other guys as well. I don't know what happened to some of my programming here. But what Ring of Honor does wrong, one of the worst things that they do is their production values. I think they're not. I don't know what it is. I get Ring of Honor on two different networks locally, and part of it is a network. I know that because my local Fox network stinks. They can never get the show on the right times. They're always preempting it for other things, and so that's a problem there. But when I have been able to watch them, especially the last few months, a lot of these shows they're pre-recorded shows, and the tracks are sticking. They're cutting into black, and there's sound, but there's no picture. A lot of stuff going on, and I don't know if it's just Fox or if it's just bad production on their part. because it's happened on the other TV station I get that has ROH as well a couple times. So I don't know if it's their production just sending out lousy tapes to or lousy files, streaming files to the networks that are syndicating them, or what. But that's got to get corrected because it's really hurting their programming, and I think that that might even be one of the reasons why NWA cut their promotions and went to doing their own streaming. I don't know. Um, so there's that, and they're not very good at rotating their talent in terms of going up and down the card that they have, unless people are leaving the company to other companies or coming in. They do a good turnover then, but their regular guys are pretty much all stable. I mean, the Briscoes are always in the tag team championship scene when they shouldn't be. Jay Lethal had been in the regular either the TV or the world's title, if not both at the same time, for like years and years and years. And now he's a tag team champion, and it's like I like Jay. He's a good wrestler, but come on, enough. You got to get some other people to push. He's got to get some other people put over, and they haven't been doing that very well, in my opinion. They've had a couple of new companies, Lifeblood, people like Lifeblood, and Lifeblood is like people from MLW and New Japan coming in to do, some competition stuff, but a lot of it is they're still losing to the guys that have the belts and are the main talent, so to speak, in the company. So it's not really helping anything. They're not really pushing the right people there. And that's a problem, I think, in Ring of Honor. And I think that's why they keep losing talent and why they're not getting the good ratings they used to. And they need better commentators. I don't like their commentators these days. Far too often they're talking about stuff that has nothing to do with the match going on. They're just rambling about other matches that are going to happen later in the show, or they're talking about the pay-per-view instead of focusing on what is actually happening on screen. And that can be a bad situation when you're watching wrestling program. I mean, yes, you need to talk about some of that stuff, but you segue into it and you cut it back and forth a little bit, but you got to focus on what is being presented to the audience in the moment. And they're not very good at that, in my opinion. So, what they need to do to improve in 2020, they need better production and announcement teams. I would get them cross promoted with AEW. I really would. Some of their guys would do great in AEW, and I think that's part of the reason why they haven't done this, because they're afraid that AEW will take them and they won't have anybody left. But they need to build their women's division and put them on television more. Kelly Klein's a good wrestler. Angelina Love is experienced, can handle it. There's quite a few people there. They only got like 6 or 8 women on the entire division. They need to build it to a little bit larger and get some people there. Get the lead championship belt off PCO. He's too old, and give it to someone younger who can carry the company, who hasn't had a turn at the world title. That means no Briscoes, no Jay Lethal, no Matt Taven, none of your guys that you regularly go back and forth with. My recommendation would be Jeff Cobb. He was their world television champion for a while. He seems to be very popular, not just in Ring of Honor, but when he does cross promotions in New Japan and other companies. And I think that's a guy that you can build around. The tag belts need to go to younger wrestlers also. Jay Lethal does not need to have a belt to carry the company. He's the face of the company. He's kind of like John Cena. Jay Lethal is like a miniature Black version of John Cena that can doesn't matter whether he holds the belt or not. He's just the guy, and everybody knows that in that company. So there's really no reason for him to have any need to have a title to carry the company. So I would pair up Bandito and Roosh. I would pair up. I don't know who I would put in there, but this is somebody other than Jay Lethal or the Briscoes as tag team champions in that respect. Last but not least, of course, is their lovely WWE, World Wrestling Federation, or World Wrestling Entertainment. I still call them the Federation from time to time. I just have it, I guess. Um, I didn't take any pictures and put them up here because they have so many networks, different programs, and so many different champions. It's just ridiculous. Their list of champions, they got 9 solo world champions. One for male NXT, male for Raw, male for SmackDown, male for 205 Live, and one for NXT UK. And then 4 women's world champions, one for NXT, NXT UK, Raw, and SmackDown. They don't have one for 205 Live because that's just the male cruiserweight. And again, many of their they have a U.S. champion, an Intercontinental champion, a 24/7 champion, 4 different men's tag team championships, and a women's tag team championship. And all those titles are there, and more than 2/3 of their key players don't hold any of those belts. What does that tell you? They got too many people on the roster. They got too much stuff going on at that company. They're too big. That's one of the biggest problems with WWE right now. But they do some things right, and what they do right now is NXT. Um, NXT has their young stars that are in their early to mid 30s, late 20s, early to mid 30s. They have the experience. They can go in the ring, and it's being booked properly. It's been a smart move putting NXT on Wednesdays opposite AEW. That's probably the smartest move WWE made all year because most of the WWE audience did not watch NXT via the WWE network because we're not paying to see wrestling and we got all these free networks that show us wrestling. And so all those performers that they had on the NXT brand were being wasted because they weren't being seen until now. The second smartest thing that they did this past year was try to elevate NXT to being an equal footing brand with Raw and SmackDown by adding the Survivor Series pay-per-view event and booking them and booking their performers, the wrestlers from that brand, to go over the other rival brands representatives during that pay-per-view, which they did quite a bit. That was the one thing that they really did right this year was do NXT right. But what they do wrong is just about everything else. They keep signing talent. They're overstocked. And they just keep trying to buy more up because they don't want AEW to sign them. A good example of that is John Morrison, who just came over to WWE from Impact. John Morrison had wrestled quite a few years over in WWE before. He went over to TNA for a while, TNA Impact, and then he went to Lucha Underground for a while, and he was back to Impact, and now he's over at WWE. But the reality is he probably would have been better suited for AEW and what AEW does rather than WWE, where he's just going to get lost in the shuffle. But that's what they do at WWE, is hire people to make them lose them in the shuffle and forget that they were ever around. Meanwhile, they're letting go of guys that they don't really want anymore. Examples being the Ascension, who was one of their top tag teams out of NXT years ago. But once they moved them up to the other 2 brands, just let them go nowhere. They could have been really a good face paint tag team like the Road Warriors or like Powers of Pain or like Demolition type thing. If they had been booked right in WWE, they weren't. So they've been let go recently. Luke Harper, who used to be one of Bray Wyatt's bodyguard Stooges guys, is leaving the company. Sin Cara is another guy who's leaving the company. And there's a bunch of talent who've openly requested being let out of their contracts, including the Hardy Boys, Jordan Miles, also known as ACH, the Revival, the Colognes, quite a few others over the last year. So that's a problem for them. They just, and exactly why these guys are being requesting to be let out of their contracts um, is they're not being utilized properly, um, or um, they're being booked poorly in different ways, and they just want to go somewhere where they think they're going to be better utilized. Um, the WWE's booking is atrocious. They keep trying to cram players and the audience doesn't want to watch. Roman Reigns, Baron Corbin are two major examples of that. They keep trying to push the same people who had brands that worked in less favorable character roles. Bray Wyatt had a good thing going. Um, they screwed it up, took him off. Now he's in another method and another one and another one, and now he's just this fiend. And every time he changes over, he just seems to get more. To me, he gets stupider and stupider as a character, and I don't want to watch him. I really hate the Fiend as a character. I don't necessarily dislike the guy, the wrestler. I just don't like the characters that he's getting pushed as. And Seth Rollins, the worst thing that they did with is the most recent booking with him, um, and that has to do since like October or so when they did the new deal with Fox and put SmackDown on Fox. Um, and that has to do with Brock Lesnar, because they still have Brock Lesnar contracted, and he has to be world champion. And why he needs to be a world champion when he only works a handful of dates a year and nobody gives a crap if he's even around is beyond me. But the worst thing that they did last year was have Seth Rollins beat Lesnar for the world title, then move Lesnar to SmackDown from Raw to beat Kofi Kingston for the SmackDown world title, then have Rollins lose his belt to Bray Wyatt, the Fiend, and then have Lesnar Wyatt flip to the other company as champion, which led to Seth Rollins' lamentation about why did we bother for the last year? Everything I just went through the last 6 months to a year just got put back the way it was. And I thought that was a great character reaction on Seth's part, since it reflected how the audience felt. But the question is why? And because it pleases Vince McMahon, I guess. But it's just really bad stuff. And now that you're trying to push, you're not going to get Rollins versus Lesnar again. So they got to figure out who to put against Lesnar. They haven't figured out that yet. So now we got to make, and since Lesnar's not on the show at all, only a handful of appearances and pay-per-views. You got to have a heel that matters. So they even though Seth was doing fine as a face, they had to slowly turn him into a heel guy that he didn't even want to be. And you could tell, and he's writing it this way, and they're writing it that way. And Seth's doing a good job with it, but it's just really bad booking, in my opinion. So that's a problem there. So what do you do? Well, my opinion, this is what WWE needs to do to improve their brand. One is fire Brock Lesnar. Just fire him. He's worthless. He doesn't compete. He can't do mic work and needs Paul Heyman to speak for him because he sucks talking on the microphone. He won't face Bobby Lashley. And you're wasting Bobby Lashley right now because they got him in that stupid love triangle marriage relationship with Lana BS. when reality is Bobby Lashley should be their monster guy right now. And he's twice the performer Lesnar is. And don't take my word for it. Their records speak for themselves. Lesnar is supposed to be this badass who does MMA fighting. He's had 9 professional MMA fights with a 5-3-1 record. Lashley has had 17 MMA fights with a 15-2 record. Who's the better MMA fighter? There you go. Lesnar was only a Division I NCAA collegiate wrestling champion one time. Okay? Lashley was an NAIA National Collegiate Wrestling Champion 3 years in a row. All this means is that Lashley went to a smaller college in a smaller association than Lesnar because Lashley's school didn't want to pay the NCAA's fees. That's all it means. Who's the better wrestler? Think about it. And to me, unless, I'm not going to say Vince McMahon's racist, but they don't really put a lot of black champions as world champions in the WWE. And when they do, they kind of do lousy things with it, like they did with Kofi. It was great having Kofi Kingston as the world champion, but then what did they do? First damn new SmackDown on Fox, here comes Brock Lesnar, 38 seconds or 18 seconds or whatever it was, to kill him, so to speak, and give Brock the title when there was no reason for that. And even before they had that mess, when SmackDown was on USA Network, Kofi was always struggling to win the belt, keep it and retain and defend the belt. And Kofi is not that weak a performer. He's a smaller wrestler, but he's not that weak a performer. And there was no reason for that. And they just kept, having him win by the skin of his nose and just bad booking. And I think that's just because Vince is a jerk and doesn't want to have a black champion. Because every time they ever have black champions, they tend to be bad in the WWE. And then when they bring good black champions over from other companies, like Lashley, like Ron Simmons, also known as Farouk in the WWE, because Ron was a world champion over in WCW at one time. Booker T was a world champion in WCW for a long time. They didn't do a whole lot of good stuff with Booker T in the WWE either, if you think about it. He was more like a comedy joke comparison to what he was when he was in WCW. So I think that's just more of the same. And I think that's just Vince being Vince. And, well, what can I say? He's a jerk. Other things that they need to do is stop taking your NXT guys that already moved up to the other 2 brands and demoting them, quote unquote. See Finn Balor. They just moved Finn Balor back from Raw or SmackDown, whichever one he was on, over NXT again, because that's where he had his start. He has to start over. Why does he need to start over? This guy, got to remember, this guy was the inaugural Universal Champion. And he couldn't defend the belt because he got injured in the match. So they had to let someone else have it. And I think it was Seth Rollins who got it. I don't remember now. But in any case, Finn's never really had a proper booking for a rematch for that. I mean, he's had his rematch and he lost. I'm not gonna, but what I'm saying is that there was no reason for him not to be booked as a world champion, other than Vince was being a jerk. And now they're putting him back to his roots, almost rebooting the character because they wasted him for like 4 years. When it feels like 4 years, it hasn't been that long, but it feels like it, because of injuries and because of the way they booked him. And it's sad because he should have been a world champion by now, other than the NXT world champion. And I think it's sad that they feel the need to push him back over to that brand instead of maybe having him win a world title in one of the other 2 brands first. But, that's my opinion there. you know, the other thing is make your U.S. and intercontinental belts matter again. The booking for both of these titles is really terrible right now. AJ Styles has the belt. Now it's Rey Mysterio has the belt. Now it's this guy has the belt. Now it's that guy has the belt. Their IC belt title holder is Shinsuke Nakamura. Shinsuke is a really good wrestler, but he doesn't speak English. And while he looks good in the ring to an extent, the way the WWE brand is, you have to be a talker. And he really shouldn't even be in the WWE. I wish his contract would go, and I wish he'd make a return to New Japan, where he belongs. I really do. He's just been wasted in the WWE because he can't he can't speak English, and you know, I mean, he does good matches, but unfortunately, I don't think the WWE appreciates the good in-ring work like they should, and I don't think that the WWE style fits the strong style that New Japan does. So, you know, between those two things, I think he's been kind of wasted for a while now as a performer, and he needs to leave that company and let someone else carry it for a while. Let go some of the talent who doesn't want to be there or whom they aren't using to their best potential. Um, there's so many guys I could list off of that. Oh, geez. Cesaro, Bobby Roode, Dolph Ziggler, um, the Revival. I hope to God they're not not going to make him into a joke. I'm just always afraid they're going to turn those guys into a joke team, and you know, well, you know, jokes and comedy are good. Look at the New Day. The New Day suck. Okay, I hate the New Day as a team. I like them as performers in ring, but as characters, I don't like them. I don't like the comedy skits. I don't. It's just, bleh. um, you know, Big E and Kofi and even Xavier Woods are good performers, but I don't know. Mm-hmm. Let's see what else here. It's pretty much it for what I think of um, the different companies. Um, let's see what else. But people have asked me some questions and stuff, but they also wanted me to see who my top wrestlers and tag teams were and stuff like that. So we'll do that. These are my top 25 wrestlers of 2019. Tetsuya Naito of New Japan Pro Wrestling. Again, you know, he is now the first double IWGP tag team wrestler, or not tag team, but intercontinental and world champion in New Japan as of 2 days ago. So, not exactly surprised there. Kota Ibushi was the title holder that Naito beat, I believe, for the IWGP belt. And you know, he's a top guy. He's one of the top three in New Japan, in my opinion. Chris Jericho is number 3. Some people might think I've got him a little bit high, but he's big enough of a name still to carry AEW, and he means something overseas in New Japan when he goes over there and does matches against their veterans. So I'll go ahead and leave him up there right now. Kazuchika Okada, New Japan, top guy right now. He would probably be a WWE guy right now if he could speak English well enough, but he can't. So, you know, he is where he is, and he's, you know, a top level guy in New Japan. He's happy there, so that's good. Number 5 is Kenny Omega because of his work in New Japan last year, and then leading into AEW. Omega was kind of the English American face for New Japan for the last couple of years, and he did a good job carrying the New Japan brand. And he hasn't done all that much in AEW yet that I'm particularly fond of, but hopefully he'll do something in 2020 and correct that. John Moxley, first off, he's been in 3 different brands. The only guy in this group who's been in, well, I take that back. He's one of 2 people who've been in 2 different, 3 different companies in the same year. He was in WWE and New Japan and in AEW, and he's done well in all 3. Number 7 is Becky Lynch, first female wrestler, because of the Becky 2 belts thing, and because they've been booking her in spite of the way WWE's been booking her, because they've been trying to keep her off the camera almost, it seems like, and she's made quite a big stink about it. And I also like how she's drawing things with Asuka, who's going to be later, who is also on this list. 8 is Nick Aldis, the champion of the NWA. He's just doing a really good job doing an old school champion. It's very much like Ric Flair used to do it when he was in NWA, WCW as the Horseman with the suits and stuff, but it's classier than Flair. It's very proper, English type, British type thing, and he does a good job with it. Number 9 is Seth Rollins. Seth has been carrying that company for quite a while. 10 is Daniel Bryan. You can go either one of those 2, flip it back and forth. If you want to put Daniel at 9, Seth at 10, I wouldn't have a problem with that. Number 11 is Adam Cole. Adam's, everybody says Adam Cole's carrying NXT right now. He's not. It's the whole Undisputed Era, but it's also Ciampa. It's also Johnny Gargano. I didn't realize this. I got Adam Cole listed twice here, 11 and 19, and I think that's probably because I know why. Adam Cole is not supposed to be 19 there. That's supposed to be Ciampa. 19 was supposed to be Tommaso Ciampa. Sorry about that. But anyway, we'll get to him in a minute. Number 12 is Tessa Blanchard. The only reason I didn't have her listed higher than Becky Lynch is because Becky Lynch is more high profile. Tessa's working in Women of Wrestling. She was the world champion, just dropped it to the Beast. Impact, we've already talked extensively about that. And she's in AAA Mexico as well. I can't praise Tessa enough. I'd like to put her above Becky Lynch, but I can't because of Becky's profile. So she's the number 2 women wrestler right now. Number 13 is Will Ospreay. He was the junior champion in NJPW. He just dropped that to Minoru Tanaka and Hiromu Tanaka, and he's been doing a really good job over there in New Japan, and he occasionally does appearances in ROH as well. 14 is Sonata at New Japan, and Sonata has been just tearing it up this past year. His rivalry with Kazuchika Okada was just amazing. If it weren't for the fact that WWE has higher profile, this guy would be up in the top 10. Easy. I'd probably have him where Seth or Daniel Bryan are if New Japan had higher profile recognition in America. Number 15 is Charlotte Flair, second best wrestler in WWE for females. 16 is Asuka, who I think is the third best. But Becky has already done her rivalry with Charlotte, and it is time for Asuka and Becky to do their thing. And I think Asuka will probably move up the ranks and probably beat Becky for the belt again, and Asuka will probably have a run with the belt for the women's title that Becky's carrying for a while. but I don't know for sure. Number 17 is James Storm from the NWA. 18 is Kofi Kingston. Adam Cole was number 11. Number 19 is actually Tommaso Ciampa from WWE NXT. 20 is Johnny Gargano from WWE. 21 is Adam Page. Hangman Adam Page from Ring of Honor, New Japan, and AEW. He's getting a good push in AEW right now. He should be good to go for next year, or this year upcoming. 22 is AJ Styles. 23 is Finn Balor, rather. 24 is Cody Rhodes, and 25 is Bray Wyatt the Fiend. And the only reason Bray Wyatt the Fiend is on this list, even though I hate his guts as a character, is because I do have to acknowledge his work ethic and the fact that he is a world champion. So I'll put him in the top 25. You notice that Brock Lesnar is not on this list, and that's because Brock Lesnar doesn't do anything. The top tag teams of 2019 were The Revival from WWE, LIJ, also known as Los Ingobernables de Japón, or de Japón, from New Japan. That would be Evil and Bushi, or Evil and Takagi. But really, the LIJ have any of the 5 members. That could be Naito, Sonata, Bushi, Minoru, any of them. So, but right now, it was Evil and Bushi for most of 2019. Number 3 is the Undisputed Era. Now, why is the Undisputed Era not number 1 instead of the Revival? The reason why is because the Revival is more of a 4 horseman faction that runs with the Horseman Freebirds rule that any one of the 4 members could conceivably be members of the tag team. And the Revival were just the 2 guys, and I always felt like the Revival was a more legitimate throwback to what Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard were, what guys like the Hart Foundation were, and that's what I want to see, is that kind of a tag team rather than everybody just switching in and out. Now to be fair, with the Undisputed Era, there have been a couple occasions where guys have been injured. Bobby Fish got injured during the match, and Roderick Strong stepped in and took his place, just because the guy was legitimately injured and couldn't compete. And rather than have a 2-on-1, the guy stepped in. I don't have a problem with that necessarily. I mean, maybe you might say that that's not fair in in the middle of the match or something. I don't know, but I can tolerate that. But when they just randomly do it, whoever's going to match up for whatever the opponents is, I don't like that. So that's why the Undisputed Era is number 3. Also because they also have the World and the U.S. or the World and the North American Championship. They're holding all the belts in NXT, and it's kind of like, number 4 is SoCal Uncensored, the AEW Tag Team Champions. They were in Ring of Honor for a while. They were in New Japan for a while as well, but mostly in 2019 they were AEW. And they're an old guard team. They've been around for a long time. And again, they just do tag team work right. And they deserve to be inaugural champions in that regard. Number 5 is Villain Enterprises, which is Marty Scurll and King Brody and PCO. And they're in Ring of Honor and NWA. Number 6 is Guerrillas of Destiny, which is basically the Bullet Club members that are left over in New Japan. Number 7 is Kabuki Warriors, which is Asuka and Kairi Sane. Good women tag team. The Viking Raiders in WWE is number 8. I don't like them being called the Viking Raiders. Unfortunately, I can't remember what they were called when they were in Ring of Honor or New Japan. I think they were a better name than the Viking Raiders. Number 9 is Taiji Ijimori and El Phantasmo, which were the New Japan junior heavyweights. Until recently, they were the champions there, and they were a good matchup there. Number 10 is Fire, also known as Kira Hogan, and Adrenaline from Women of Wrestling. They just became the tag champions over there. They just got a good feel to them as a team. They're relatively new, and I'm hoping that they'll actually leave WoW eventually and carry a women's tag team gold to another division somewhere in another promotion, because I think they're both a good match and do a good job. Number 11 is the New Day from WWE. Truthfully, I don't like the New Day, but they're popular, and I understand the importance of what they do in the promotion, so I'll put them where they're at. Number 12 is the modern day LAX from Impact Wrestling. Only because they're doing a little bit more younger work than the original LAX, who are proud and powerful over in AEW down in 17. But we'll get to them in a minute. And I had to put some Impact people into this thing somewhere. So that's why LAX is there. Because really, Impact does not have a very good, strong tag division. Number 13 is the Briscoe Brothers from Ring of Honor. If you're going to do a Ring of Honor mentions other than Villain Enterprises, you have to mention the Briscoes. They're basically the old guard gateway team in that company. Number 14 is the North. They're the Impact Tag Team Champions. They're too young to be ranked any higher, are too inexperienced. They'll be, but they're going to probably go up the ranks if they keep doing a good job, and maybe even move to a different promotion, get booked right. Number 15 is the Young Bucks. Personally, I wouldn't rank them that high. I think they're very overrated, but I had to put them at 15 just because of their popularity as a tag team. They were in New Japan and Ring of Honor, and now they're in AEW. 16 is Jay Lethal and Jonathan Gresham from Ring of Honor. I don't even see the point of that tag team even existing, to be honest, other than Jay Lethal needs to have a tag team title or has to have a title belt somewhere in Ring of Honor where he's not happy. So I'm not, but they're okay, so, they're better than some of these other teams, and some of the other teams in Ring of Honor were getting annoying, so I don't mind them being the champs, and I don't mind them ranking them here. 17 is Proud and Powerful, which is the original LAX. I want to say Santana and Homicide, but it's not. Hold on a second. That is Santana and Ortiz. Okay, yeah. And that is the original LAX, and I guess I'm just not too proud on them. I'm just they're okay. Number 18 is the Kingdom. That is Matt Taven's team, 3-man team. TK O'Ryan and somebody else as well in ROH. They were okay, but I don't know. Like I said, the tag division in Ring of Honor has not been the best. The Lucha Brothers are AEW. They're ranked 19 mostly because of their popularity. They're not this good. They shouldn't even be on this list. They suck as far as properly doing tags. These guys go in and out without tagging all the time. They just do spots. They do whatever they want in the ring practically. And it's all because they have a cool look, basically. And They're really two singles wrestlers who are, I guess, are related, so they do a tag sometimes, but they are not good tag wrestlers. They're just popular. Number 20 is Best Friends. That's Trent, who used to be Trent Britta, but now he's just known as Trent. And Kentucky Gentleman, I can't remember his last name. His rest of his name, he just known as the Kentucky Gentleman, is part of his character gimmick. And he has a Orange Cassidy as their sidekick as well. They're there because somebody has to be there in a way. You know, they have a lot of potential, and they've shown potential in Ring of Honor. They showed potential elsewhere now in AEW. So I'm going to put them where they're at as potential. 21 is the Iconics from WWE. They were not booked well. I misspelled Iconics. It's supposed to be 2 I's, apparently. But whether it's Billy Kay and Peyton Royce, but anyway, they're they just haven't been a very good booking for them. They just avoided. It's like they were avoiding competition when they had the belts and stuff like that. But they have a lot of potential to be a really good team, and I wish they would book them better in WWE and have them actually be a stronger competitive team against Asuka and Kairi Sane and other people like that. Number 22 is the Bouncers, and they're okay. 23 is the Wild Card from NWA. They're okay. 24 is Bobby Roode, Chad Gable, and Dolph Ziggler, and that's Roode basically teamed up with anybody. Is more or less what I was thinking there. And honestly, I don't like it when they team Bobby Roode with anybody. Bobby Roode should be a singles guy. Yes, he did a lot of tag team work in TNA with James Storm, and he did a lot of tag team work with other people before he was with James Storm in TNA. He's a good tag team guy, but this guy should be getting put over like Rick Rude was put over in the 80s and 90s in the WWE today, and he's not. And he just got suspended for wellness policy, which I think is a bunch of crap. He never had any drug problems or issues at any other company he's worked for, so where did this come from? Especially when he's been there for 2 years, all of a sudden it just pops up. I don't know. I don't buy that. I think he's more or less one of those guys who's probably bitching at WWE as how he's being used, and they put him on a 30-day suspension. Well, you think about it. Wellness policy. You think about what we do for you. And I wouldn't be surprised if Rude's out of the company by 2020 and over somewhere else where he can actually be utilized. That's just my opinion on that. Ziggler's another guy who was discontented. I would not be surprised if Ziggler leaves in 2020. 25 is Roppongi 3K, the junior heavyweight champions and tag team champions in New Japan. They just won. And those guys are really underrated. And I just thought I'd put them in there as my last tag team. So those are my top tag teams of the year. As to who to look for in 2020, definitely our number one choice is MJF, Maxwell Jacob Friedman in AEW. They booked him just beautifully so far. He's going to be a top heel facing off against Cody Rhodes. He's just I I really think they've got him nailed perfectly. Number two would be Andrade in the WWE. He just got the U.S. belt off of Rey Mysterio. I think they're going to do a decent run with Andrade there. I hope they do anyway. And I hope that they don't just give it right back to Ray or something like that. Ray's been around long enough; he doesn't need to have a belt. Um, I don't know why. I guess I don't know. But anyway, I would not have him job the belt back to Ray. Um, three is Aleister Black. They're doing a good push on Aleister right now. I like his persona. I like what they're doing with the guy. Good shot. Four is Keith Lee, NXT wrestler in WWE. He's going to be one of their new big men in 2020. I don't know if he's going to get moved over to the other two brands throughout the year, but he's a lot like Samoa Joe, and I think that's going to be a good thing for him as long as he stays healthy because Joe's been injury prone lately. Number five is Matt Riddle, WWE. Matt Riddle is kind of like this. He's like a '90s version of one of the Von Erich brother that didn't wear shoes. And I'm trying to think of which one that was. That would be Kevin. Okay. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And, I see a lot of Kevin Von Erich and Matt Riddle, not just because he wrestles barefoot, but because just it's just the whole physique and the way he does certain things reminds me of Von Erich. And I think that's a good thing. Number six is Darby Allin from AEW. He's small. He's only like 180 pounds, soaking wet if he's lucky. I think he might even be less than that. I think he might be 170. But if he can put a little more muscle on, a little more size, and still keep his agility and mobility in the ring, he should be a top draw for AEW for years to come. Number seven is Drew McIntyre from WWE. This guy should have been a big name for WWE years ago. I don't know why they let him go in the first place, but they did. He was in Impact for a while, did okay over there, but again, not really used very well. Now he's back in WWE. He's been getting pushed, but he hasn't been done very well in terms of where he should be. I mean, they keep him at the top of the lower tier, and they aren't even giving him a lower tier belt. It's time that he got pushed and given belts to defend. And I don't know, have him beat up Shinsuke Nakamura or something. I forget which brand he's on right now, but whichever one, US or IC belt, have him hold it for a while, if nothing else. If not, give him a world belt. In fact, I wouldn't mind seeing Drew versus Brock Lesnar and Drew winning that. Number eight is Tessa Blanchard, Impact and WoW. Like I said, she is probably the second best. I think she is the best women wrestler in the world right now, but second best overall because of Becky Lynch's profile. But if Tessa is booked properly, or if she gets tired of not being booked properly and she gets moved over to another promotion, whether that be AEW or WWE, I think she'll take off. I really do. Number nine is the Beast, Women of Wrestling. That's who just beat Tessa in the for the world title in WoW. And she's a big girl, so to speak. I mean, she's a bodybuilder type girl. Um, Let me see if I can get a quick picture of her so that you guys. Oh, I don't like that one. Oh, sorry, I'm not getting a good picture of her. Sorry about that, folks. But one that I really would like to share. But she's like 5'8" or 5'9", about 165, just really well shredded and really well built. Good wrestler, and you know, maybe not as experienced as she should be, and I'm not sure she really wants to do the career of a wrestler full time because I think she wants to be a firefighter and stuff. So I don't know. That's probably why she hasn't gone bigger than she already is. As far as more popularity and notoriety in the business. But anyway, number 10 is Sammy Guevara of AEW. Sammy's doing a really good job uh, being the mouthpiece of the inner circle for Chris Jericho's group when Chris isn't there. He's doing a good job being kind of like the junior heavyweight lapdog of Chris Jericho's faction in AEW. But he's also carrying himself well in the ring as a performer, and that's a good thing. So he's got a good upswing potential for 2020. 11 is Hangman Adam Page from AEW. Um, Hangman's been around for a few years, and they're starting to book him as possibly going against um, the Elite because he is part of the Elite group in AEW, and um, they've been showing a split between him and Kenny Omega. And I hope that, and eventually I get the point he's breaking off from there, and he should because he's really a better guy on his own, and I think he can do a good character on his own. He doesn't need to be around Omega or the Bucks or Cody right now. Um, so hopefully they'll get him written and booked well. I'm hoping that they'll kind of look at him with Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard being the coaches, and Dusty Runnels being the coaches. Uh, those three guys in the back training these guys. I'm hoping that they'll get Hangman doing something akin to Barry Windham or Terry Funk um, in the cowboy Hangman motif that they're going to do with that character. And if they do, it should take off, and he should do a very good job as a character for 2020. Number 12 is Wardlow from AEW. That's MJF's bodyguard. Just a big uh, bodyguard guy. But if they book him right and eventually have him turn on MJF or just abandon MJF and go on his own as a monster in AEW, um, if he can go well enough in the ring, and we're going to find out because Wardlow has to go against Cody sooner or later so that Cody and MJF can have their feud. We'll see where that goes, and we'll see where he's at for 2020 with that match probably. Number 13 is Buddy Murphy in WWE. Um, Although Buddy Murphy and Aleister Black are kind of mirror reflections of the sort of one another, and they've been booked that way recently. I have Buddy down a little bit lower um, because Buddy, he looks too vanilla to me. I guess is the best way to put it. It doesn't really have a unique look the way some of the other guys do. Definitely not the way Black does. Black's got so many tattoos and stuff. I mean, he stands out. You know who he is when he gets in the ring. Buddy Murphy, he's got a nice build, but he's just very generic looking, and he doesn't have. Uh, but if he can carry himself in the wrestling matches the way he has with Aleister Black lately, he'll get put over. But I'm kind of hoping they repackage him just a little bit to give him a little bit more character. Number 14 and 15, Rhea Ripley and Shayna Baszler in WWE. Both of them, uh, they're pretty much the two big girl badasses of WWE. They're both in NXT. One of them's going to have to move up to one of the other rosters so that the other can hold court in NXT, I think. I'm pretty sure Baszler's the one that's going to move over to one of the other brands. Um, I'm kind of hoping that it's SmackDown, but it'll probably be Raw because they are going to want to put her against either Asuka or um, Becky instead of putting her up against Bayley. Because Bayley, while she's a good wrestler, just isn't as strong a profile character as Becky has been. Number 16 is Nyla Rose. Um, Part of the reason is because she is a transgender female wrestler, and if AEW does this right, they've got to make her either be chasing the champion or the champion in 2020. Half the reason I think that she's been held back is because there's been negative pushback towards AEW over her gender position, and you know she's not the only transgender wrestler in the business. And in fact, there's three or four others. Um, in fact, another member who hasn't even been seen on AEW, as far as I'm sure. Let me check that real quick. And that would be let's see here. Well, he's not. Sonny Kiss is actually just gay, not transgender. But um, I wasn't sure about that. I had to check that up real quick. I haven't seen Sonny on AEW, even though he's part of the roster. I haven't seen him on any matches, so I don't know how he's going to be performed. But it's going to be different. Let's see. Velveteen Dream is number 17, and very much like Sonny Kiss, um, only Velveteen is straight. He's playing a kind of a gay character. Sonny Kiss is gay and more feminine in the way he presents himself. So, um, you know, they're both kind of around the same in a way. It's like Sonny Kiss is AEW's version of Velveteen Dream, and vice versa. So, you know, I have watched a couple of Velveteen Dream matches on NXT since it's come over to the USA Wednesday night show. Was not impressed by him very much. Um, Not sure why, but everybody else seems to be pretty high on him. So I'm gonna say he's gonna be someone that people will be should be looking for in the show for 2020. Um, 18 is Tommaso Ciampa. I'm not sure if they're going to keep him in WWE NXT. He wants to stay in NXT, is what I've been hearing. But I think it's time he moved over to one of the major brands and started tearing up some people over there. I really do. Um, but we'll see. Number 19 is Juice Robinson. He just got the tag team belts over in New Japan. He was also their American champion last year for a time. So, he's up on the upswing. 20 is Eli Drake at NWA. Very big um, guy for mic work, good in-ring capabilities. I'd like to see him go for a really good run somewhere other than Impact. NWA is as good a place as any, but if NWA doesn't want to give it to him, then I hope that he goes to AEW and gets it. Number 21 is Hikaru Shida, AEW. Good talent. Really took over the four-way match last week on AEW for the women. Should have won over Riho. Should be the AEW champion right now. Not happy with the way that was booked at all. 22, Taya Valkyrie of Impact. Ty is probably one of the top 5 wrestlers in the industry right now. I would say it's probably, pardon me, Becky and Tessa, Asuka, Charlotte, and then Taya is how I would probably put the top 5 wrestlers for women in the business. 23 is Luchasaurus in AEW. If they use him properly and get him going as a singles competitor, he'll be someone to watch for. If they keep him stuck with Jurassic Express joke team, then I don't think he will. 24 is Davey Boy Smith Jr., MLW. Currently, he's not coming back to New Japan. I don't know what the deal is, but they did a falling out. I'm hoping he will go to AEW at some point and get a good singles run. He's been doing so many tag team stuff right now. He was with Lance Archer with Killer Elite Squad, but that group's been split since Lance is staying in New Japan. And I'd just like to see him get a really good solo run. For those of you who don't, you should recognize Davey Boy Smith Jr. as the son of the British Bulldog of WWE fame, but I just want to see this guy do well. In 25, last but not least, is Kushida. He's in WWE right now, but he was a major junior heavyweight player in New Japan and Ring of Honor for the last number of years. If he learns English well enough to do good mic work in WWE, he can take off like a rocket. So, it just depends on whether or not he can get good mic work, whether or not he's going to be a hot property in 2020. Now, there were a couple of questions that people asked me about this stuff. So we're going to get to the questions. And first question is from Jeff Morris. Is it true that you wrestle professionally? Yes, it is. I wrestled from 92 to 94 semi-professionally in a group called Bar Wrestling Federation and another federation. I was 5'5", 141 pounds. I was a tag team specialist. Most of the guys in our group were smaller. And we did shows for charity events, basically. We didn't get paid for it or anything. We just it was, I guess you could say it was just living the dream in that respect, because I knew I was never going to actually go professional. But I did enjoy that little bit of time I did with it. What happened to the wrestling coverage that you were supposed to do for IndieVolt? Weren't you going to do some sort of live podcast or a show of some kind? That question is from Anonymous. Um, basically, I did a number of articles for IndieVolt um, for Grant over there. He posted one, and then he didn't post any of the others I did. I did something like six different articles, and he just never posted them. And then he was talking about doing a live show promoting a local Michigan-based indie company, a wrestling company, where I would do voiceover commentary, type work on it. And that he just never got back to me on that. So basically, a lot of things with Indie Volt just kind of just you know, whether Varian lost interest or whatever, he went his own way, and I've got mine. Are you a bleep, 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 bleep? Are you a fan of the bleep, bleep, bleep? Jim Cornette? Apparently, somebody doesn't like Jim Cornette. For those of you who don't know who Jim Cornette is, he's a former manager and booker and promotion owner in wrestling. Been around for 35, 40 years in the business. Has his own podcast, and he does a lot of, some would say racist. I would say they're just old man's phrases and thinking that people who are overly politically correct need to just pull their heads out of their asses and leave it alone. He was doing commentary for NWA because he said something that was supposed to be a racist joke, which really wasn't intended as a racist joke. But okay, whatever. They fired him um, over it, and that was dumb because it's not just Jim's fault. If it was live in NWA, I could understand it, but when they tape all their shows and there's 2 or 3 weeks taping before they're aired, if there was a real problem with it, then the producers and the owner of NWA should have noticed it and edited it out beforehand before it got out to the public. So obviously they didn't think anything was wrong with what was said. So again, overreaction to public being jackasses, basically. Am I a fan of Jim Cornette? Not particularly a fan. I didn't really care for him when he was a regular manager for the Midnight Express or other companies. But I have a lot of respect for what he's contributed to the business over the last few decades, and I do consider him a wealth of information about the history of wrestling, and interesting enough to listen to on his podcast. But I'm not a fan as like, oh, gee, let me go get one of his T-shirts or let me go get an autograph or anything like that. But I do respect what he's contributed for the business. And Eric W asks, have you watched the NWA Power Hour? And I actually put an extra R in there. It's supposed to be 3 R's. But thoughts? Yes, I have watched it, Eric. I haven't watched all the episodes. I've watched some of them. They're okay. Mm-hmm. Again, it's very reminiscent of the 80s NWA. When it was on TBS before Ted Turner bought NWA out as WCW. And, I don't really have a problem with the show. I kind of wish it was a little more modernized, but, okay, whatever. It's okay. They got good wrestlers. I think their commentators, if Tony Schiavone was doing NWA instead of AEW or MLW, or if Jim Ross was doing it, it would be set up right for NWA, I think. But there's only so many different commentators available, and they're going to go where they get paid the best. So there you go. What do you think of the WWE inducting the New World Order faction into the Hall of Fame? That's the WWE Hall of Fame, but not Eric Bischoff, who was arguably the guy who at least co-created the group. That's a question from Ishvan or Isfan. Um, I think it's WWE being petty, but I don't really know. I mean, it's obviously they're being petty. Um, Vince is a dick. That's the way it is. Um, Obviously, Eric Bischoff should be a member of the Hall of Fame under the NWO. There's no question about that. And I hope that when the NWO guys are up there doing their acceptance speeches, whether Vince tells them don't mention Eric's name or whatever, screw you, Vince. If they won't give him, let him be there. At least I hope that the guys acknowledge him on TV because he deserves it. But we'll see. Chances are, even if they do it live, the thing will probably be pre-recorded before it's put on TV, so it'll be edited out anyway. It sucks, but obviously Eric should be inducted into the Hall of Fame as a member of that. But because of other issues, more recently when he was hired to work SmackDown, and whatever reasons it didn't pan out, um, you know, what can you say? Vince is just being a jerk. Dylan asks, who do you think should be the WWE World Champions? I mean, Lesnar is hardly ever on the shows, and I know you aren't a fan of Bray Wyatt, the Fiend. Uh, who do I think should be the world champions? Wow. Um, Drew McIntyre should be a world champion. I think he should be booked as world champion. I think he make a good heel world champion. Um, so he's one of the possibilities. Um, I think Cesaro should have a run before he leaves the company. He probably won't get it, but I think he deserves one. Um, hmm. Finn Balor, I mentioned him earlier, obviously. Um, those are three guys that I could see holding the Universal or World titles in Raw or SmackDown brands. No problem. I could see Tommaso Ciampa even if they were going to move him up. He would have to go on a tear run and probably get whatever title is not Brock Lesnar, but Bobby Lashley would be another guy give a world title shot to give a world title run on. So they got quite a few guys. So I don't know who would I put them on, but what I'm saying is there's a lot of options available that if I was booking it, I could make it work and probably have the audience be entertained by it. The next question is, if you were Tony Khan and you were running AEW, what would you do differently from Mike T in North Carolina? Well, I take the Bucks and I take Kenny Omega off the um, managing booking crew, and I'd put Arn Anderson, Dean Malenko, and Tully Blanchard on the booking with Dustin and Cody, and I'd have Arn handling the booking for the tags. I think Arn and Tully probably doing man tags. I would probably have Dean Malenko build a the lower cruiserweight type level guys more because Dean was a cruiserweight himself, and I think he could build a really good brand there. And I would hire someone with some credibility to be the females coach and book that instead of letting those elite guys screw it up. Because that's the only thing I would really change in that respect. Um, get rid of some of the guys that are joke comedy skit players. They're not worth the money unless they show me something that they can actually perform. Um, but other than that, I don't see any real reason to change what's going on. But that, necessarily. But if I was going to change things, that's what I would change in AEW right now. Um, obviously, I told you I'd book Awesome Kong and have Nyla Rose or some of the other girls chasing uh, Awesome Kong in the women's division. Um, but they do have the champions belts for the men and the tag teams on the right people right now, so I can't say much. You know, as far little tweaks, but not a lot of differences. Will McAbee from Georgia asks, "Do you think it was smart for AEW to book Cody Rhodes so that he cannot become world champion?" Um, in the context of the fact that Cody being kind of like executive vice president, they didn't want any of the guys, Young Bucks, Omega, or Cody, to have the titles right away. Um, that's obvious. Um, I don't know what the condition is going to be where he comes back and gets a world title shot, because he's going to be a world champion in this company eventually. He is. But as far as in the storyline with Jericho, I thought it was um, a little bit. I won't say unnecessary, but I didn't like it because if this is in 2 years from now, or something, yes. But now I think it's a little bit too early to do it. But you know, I get why they did it, and I don't have a problem with it. But eventually they're going to have to pull that out of the storyline some way. After Jericho's dropped the belt to somebody else, um, maybe the next guy who is champion and is a heel champion wants a piece of Cody and says, I'll put the title up. I don't care. Whatever. Maybe they'll do that, but we'll figure it out, or they will figure it out at some point. Next question. Tom V asks, "What do I think about the intergender matchups, particularly ones with Tessa Blanchard versus Sami Callihan or Brian Cage? Worthy or a bad idea?" I think I've pretty much already answered that question. I'm against that type of thing. One-on-one, like particularly the matches with Callahan and Blanchard, where they were just using weapons and just beating the crap out of each other. I just thought that was sick, um, and I don't mean sick in a good way. I just thought it was wrong, and yeah. Um, I don't know. I'm not against women versus men wrestling. I guess I just would prefer it be done weight class. If you're going to have a 135-pound woman wrestler, then go get the 135, 140-pound male wrestlers. And there are people in MMA who are in that weight class who could do pro wrestling and do it well. And that would strengthen your brand, because then you'd have low weight classes like MMA, which is becoming very popular and superseding pro wrestling now, because it's real fighting, versus real fighting MMA versus real fighting in our sports entertainment in pro wrestling scene. And we've got a lot of MMA fighters who have gone to pro wrestling and back and forth between the two, like Brock Lesnar, Ken Shamrock, um, Bobby Lashley, quite a few people like that, Don Fry. So King Mo, quite a few people. So if they're going to do that anyway, um, we might as well put proper weight classes in pro wrestling and start building brands properly that way. And then if you want to put weight class versus weight class, women versus men. I guess you could do that as a sports entertainment thing, but again, I don't know. Not my thing. Um, and Amy Thiessen asks, what are your thoughts about the 30-day suspension of Bobby Roode for violating the wellness policy? Again, I've kind of already addressed that, but to reiterate, I think it's a bunch of BS. I don't think Bobby Roode did violate a wellness policy. I think he was outspoken with management behind the scenes, and they gave him a 30-day cooling off period without pay or whatever. That's what I really think happened. Because Bobby's been around the business for so long and he's never had any kind of violation that I've ever heard of before. So it doesn't ring true to me. I'm sorry. Anonymous asks, who do you think has the best overall roster and programming of the very promotions out there today? It's New Japan by a mile. I mean, far and away, it's New Japan. I wish that there would be somebody in America that would take New Japan on and just blow away both AEW and WWE, because I really believe if they could build that with an American audience, that would be the most dominant group by brand by far. And that is our questions. So I think, whoops, pardon me. Let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much it then for tonight. We're on about 2.5, a little over 2.5 hours on this one. And I hope I covered everything for wrestling for a good while now. I'll probably maybe talk about it again, maybe around February or something. Maybe I'll do one wrestling episode a month. Maybe we'll see. I'll talk about what my favorite matches are, what who I'm liking currently, or something like that. But this is more about the comics. But every once in a while we'll do a wrestling episode just to please the 5 or 6 of you out there who've been asking me when I was going to do that, and about the 10 or 12 of you out there who have asked me questions about the wrestling over the last year periodically. So hopefully I've satisfied your curiosity as to my interests and tastes in that medium. On Thursday this week, I'm supposed to have a guest scheduled, and that will be Armand Villavert Jr. of Gladstone's School for World Conquerors fame. That is, if he's healthy enough. Recently, he developed, I believe he got flu or strep throat, and that was a couple days ago. I don't know how well he's feeling, but if he's not up for it, then we'll come up with something else. But we'll see. I'm going to be spending the next couple of days finishing up the new artwork and opening for the new brand, I hope, for episode 1. I guess I can show a preview real quick. There's a little bit of a preview of a part of the art. It'll be there. So hold on a second. There we go. But that's got to be finished. And then there's a few other things that need to be finished. But hopefully, if we don't have Armand, we'll have a bunch of other stuff to do, reviews on and stuff. So we will see you on Thursday then, and at our normal time at 9 p.m. on Thursday evening on this same YouTube channel. Thanks for watching this week, and we will see you on Thursday I do believe. If you want to contact me and ask me any questions for Thursday or other questions about comics or wrestling or television or whatever, you can reach me at Facebook at lewis.brightraven, deviantart.com/brightraven. The YouTube channel is Quoth the Raven, Lewis Brightraven. Email me at quoththeravenlbr72@gmail.com or lewisbrightraven@yahoo.com. I'll get it. And until then, thanks for watching the show. If you did like the show, make sure you hit a like or a subscribe. We appreciate it. And we'll see you on Thursday, I believe. And see you next week.